Welcome to the Visible Art of Translation podcasts. This series of podcasts are part of the EU-funded INCREC project. Our focus is creativity, translation, and technology in literary and audiovisual translation. Our goal with this series is to give visibility to the often invisible skills, role, and voice of professional translators. Thank you, Robbert-Jan, for taking the time to come and talk to us today. And Robbert-Jan is, of course, a translator, but also an editor, a writer, a performer. He has translated major works of art. I feel I am a bit with royalty, Dutch translation royalty. He has translated the Beatles, Bob Dylan, Wagner arias, poetry by Carms, stories by Woody Allen, Anatoly Marienhof, Nabokov, Doblatov, De Quincey, Tarkovsky, theater by Shakespeare, and he co-translated with Eric Bindervoet, Finnegan's Wake, and he also edited the Oxford Classics version of this book. He translates from English, Russian, and German into Dutch. But there are so many things in your biography. I would like you to talk a little bit about yourself and tell us. I saw that you studied history, so I would like to know how you became interested in translation.
Well, not through history, not through my studies in any case. This was more an escape from the studies that we started translating. Of course, yeah, I translated. It was never my intention to be a translator. I started. I recently remembered that my father translated and wrote computer books, and sometimes he, when I in the last class of the high school, he said, "Well, you do one," and it was very, very boring. So I never thought I would be a translator. But when I studied history, I met Erik Bindervoet and we started a magazine. We started writing. We wrote a lot. We wrote even 2 novels, and then we thought, well, this is not going to be a career for us. So we asked ourselves, well, how about translating? And we translated then. Tried to translate the Journaux Intimes of Baudelaire from the French with poetry in it that we couldn't do at all at that time because we were 22. And we sent it to a publisher, Privé Domain, who was specialized in these ego documents. And we got a letter back for, yes, thank you for sending this manuscript, but we don't have any plans to publish it. And we were flabbergasted because, yes, we give them these plans to do it, but so they only had to take it up, this plan. So that was a kind of deception. But then Erik and I we were reading Joyce, Ulysses, we were, of course, smashed away with. But there was this other book that it took him 16 years to write after Ulysses, and it was incomprehensible until Erik found in a bookshop the annotations of Roland McHugh, and every line and every word was more or less explained where it came from, which language it was, and where Joyce took it. And then we thought, oh, maybe we can read it. But the reading was still so difficult that we decided, well, we'll translate it at the same time, because it was a matter of every word you had to disengage from its context and then to reassemble again. And we could just as well do it in Dutch. And this took us 7 years. And that's how we started translating.
Yeah, you started with a major
work. We worked back from the Finnegan's Wake, and we recently completed some years ago, the Dubliners and the small works, as we call it, between brackets.
So I read in one interview that you started a little bit translating Finnegan's Wake a little bit by accident or as a game between you, or that you never thought you could actually, the objective was not to translate the whole work And you didn't have any funds to do this, right? You were
Yeah,
doing.
for a long time, for a long time. Yeah, the first time we started translating Finnegan's Wake, it was without understanding something and without the annotations of Roland McHugh. And we just picked a page. It was page 98, I remember well. There was many Dutch words in it, so we thought it was easy. But of course, it immediately appeared that Dutch in Finnegan's Wake was one of the most difficult things to do. Uh, but yeah, nonetheless, afterwards, we just went on, and we didn't have any funds, and we went to the Bezige Bij who published Joyce, and they said, well, it's a very good idea. You know what? When you finished, you come again. So they didn't want to give us any contract, and with a contract, of course, you can get no funds. But then the Prins Bernhard Fonds. Oh, it's now not the Prins Bernhard Fonds anymore, but it's just the Cultuurfonds, because Prins Bernhard seems to have been has
Yeah,
fallen out.
demoted.
They chipped in. We could send we could send some bills to that for books that we needed to them, which was very nice. And in the end, also the Letterenfonds gave us a subsidy. So yeah, because in Holland we have this famous Letterenfonds subsidies, which is absolutely ideal, and you can't do it. Yeah, you can't really do translations very well without being paid a little bit more. They say time is money, but for them, money is time. Money pays for time
that you can devote to this. And so I imagine I read as well that you had to do a lot of research in Joyce almost archives to try and find out exactly if that is ever possible. But for people that haven't read the piece, it's very challenging even to start. So what were the most complex parts to translate for both of you?
in Finnegan's Wake, or
in Finnegan's Wake?
Yeah, Finnegan's Wake is hors category in translating, actually, because you have to really, what I said, assemble and disassemble and assemble every word, and hope that the flow of the work will remain the same when you have it in some kind of Dutch. But it is very musical, and that was the most fun part, to make the music the same, the tone. And Joyce uses a lot of songs and a lot of titles of songs, and
yeah, and he was a good singer, wasn't he?
A good singer, and it flows and flows and flows, and that is one of the main things that you should try to keep an eye on translating, not only translating Finnegan's Wake, but translating tout court. And so when we finished it after 7 years, we before Finnegan's Wake, we had tried to translate the songs of the Beatles, because we were both crazy, Erik and I, about the Beatles too. We had complete works, and we could sing along with everything, and sing, we knew everything by heart. But we tried to translate it, but it didn't work. But after Finnegan's Wake, we managed to do it very quickly, because we had so much experience now in this musicality, that we completed their songs, their complete records in about a year, which is very quick.
So this is what I wanted to ask you about, this musicality, because I have the impression from your work as a translator, but also as a writer in these poems that you have written for children, for example, the musicality of the words is very, very important, the rhythm, the rhymes, but especially this musicality. So how do you see this relationship in translation, the relationship between music, even if it's not only songs, but also prose or poetry? How do you see this relationship? And do you think you have to have a good ear for translating?
Translating is not so much different from writing itself in this respect. Anthony Burgess said that the best writers write with their ears. And of course, if you have a feeling for this musicality, then it strikes you, and you want to bring it out, and also in another language. But I have very much difficulty to read works of authors that don't have this musical ear. And so I deliberately choose authors who do write with their ears. You have, but there's luckily a lot of them. Glenn O'Brien too, and Lewis Carroll, and the Russian children poets who also were among the first that were really wrote for children in a kind of nursery rhyme, sing-song way, without attaching too much meaning to the meaning of words.
And without the morality of some of the children, I imagine.
Oh yeah, the morality is right out of the window immediately.
Exactly. That's what is attractive, I think, about this. So from all these major works that you have translated, and also different genres, novels, poetry, and all this, and all extremely challenging, which ones are your preferred translations, if there are any? And do you have a favorite translation?
I don't think I have a favorite genre. It really depends on the work itself, if it becomes a favorite. And I am so lucky that I've been able to translate works that I really love and that are really inside my veins. For instance, the Russian writer Dovlatov, who writes very short sentences because he has a contraint that no two words should start with the same letter. And it has a kind of magical feeling to it. So that's prose, but it's just like poetry, really, the way he writes his prose. And children's poetry, Russian children's poetry, was also perfect to do because you feel that you have the freedom, and not only the freedom, but the freedom to make up your own words and be to dress yourself in this poem and just find out where it goes. So that was also wonderful to do. And yeah, I mean, Ulysses and Finnegan's Wake, they consist of many genres. So
yes,
so
all the genres and all the languages, almost inventing all this language.
Yeah.
You have translated solo and in collaboration with Eric. How is the process different when you're translating on your own and with somebody, and what do you prefer?
The process is for a long stretch exactly the same. That's the stretch that you are behind your own computer. And then it becomes radically different because when you collaborating, you send your piece, your chapter to the other one, and you get it back with all kinds of suggestions. And then you have to go all over it again, and then again, and then again, and then again. We always say that translating collaboration, if you translate the both of you, then it doesn't take twice. It takes twice as much time, and it's not twice as little time.
I always envisage, I don't know why, maybe because of this musicality, that you would talk to each other and maybe speak the words. Is this the case? Did you kind of read to each other, or was all in writing?
No. It's impossible to collaborate. I think if you don't see each other very often, and we saw each other on a daily basis. Yeah, more or less. No, and we talked about everything, and we knew each other's language and way of speaking and way of translating. Yeah, we just had a feeling for it, and that made it also more easy. I don't think you can co-translate at a distance, actually. But who knows? Maybe there are people who can, and I know that publishers sometimes want it because they want to bring out a book really quickly, and then they ask 2 or 3 or 4 translators to do a piece. Well, I don't know, but usually there's books that it doesn't really matter how it is translated. It's just you read it and you forget about it. There's many of these books. There's not so interesting. And that's more. I think that artificial intelligence can do this job for us.
Ah, interesting. I was going to ask you about this, that I always thought when reading the Ulysses, or even reading a little bit about Joyce, that Joyce would have enjoyed having the internet and having technology, also because of the game possibilities that this gives you. I don't know if you think this, and do you think he would have used maybe GPT or ChatGPT? And how do you use technology?
I don't know about Joyce because he knew a lot and he read a lot and he made notes a lot, but now you have the phenomenon of Wikipedia novels. You just slurp it up from the internet and you pretend that you know everything about a certain subject. So I don't know if he really would have liked it, and yeah, he would have liked it. Probably he would have used it to insert more mistakes into his language, because this is what he really liked. He was somebody who relied on chance, on also on mistakes. He could pick up on mistakes, on faults, on errors, and that's what he liked, the unexpected. So that maybe he would have used it for. For myself, I haven't used ChatGPT at all yet. No, and I'm not going to do it either.
And but you mentioned that certain books
Yeah.
could be translated using AI. What sort of books, and why would they be translated using AI, do you think?
Just because their language is not interesting, and it's only about subjects and about getting the story done, and there's nothing that a creative translator can add to that. It's a chore. It's so that's I think that as translators we should be glad that there are tools as not only ChatGPT but also
DeepL or Google
DeepL or
Translate.
Google Translate. Yeah, these things.
It's funny that you say that, because in the experiments that we have done with different type of texts, when the source texts is more creative, so it has more what we call units of creative potential, it's more difficult for the machine. When the text is based more on actions, like a story that is tense or evolves through the actions, then it's easier for the machine because the style tends to be simple.
I'm glad that the science has proven this hunch.
Well, I don't know if it's proven with one experiment, but I think we should do more experiments on this regard. Yes.
What I also read is that no matter how simple the text is that is to be translated, or that artificial intelligence has translated, people can always feel that there's something non-human about it. Is that also?
Yeah, we did this experiment with almost 220 readers, and we saw that we did an experiment on engagement and reception of the translation, and also enjoyment of the text. And yeah, the machine translated text was significantly less engaging, less enjoyable, less. They rated the translation worse when it was not touched by any human professional, let's call them. But once the professionals edited the text, then it was different in Dutch than in Catalan, for example. The readers had different. Yeah. For Catalan, they tended to like a bit more the professionals writing on their own or translating on their own than the post editing, while in Dutch it wasn't that clear.
But don't you think that this is an enormous challenge and an opportunity for translators to become more creative, and not to translate what is written, but really to get into a kind of text and choose solutions that aren't immediately the first solution of the dictionary, for instance? I can give you an example, but I
yes,
mean,
please.
stately plump Buck Mulligan came from the stairheads. So this Ulysses begins.
Okay.
If you translate the word plump, if Chat GPT or somebody else, some other machine translates this word plump, you get dik, vet, or mollig, or whatever. Which is, if you read it in Dutch, then you lose the feel of the English sentence. You get a Dutch sentence, but a sentence about which you wonder, why did anybody write this sentence? It's not an event. It's not funny. It's just information. And the artificial intelligence can never make an event out of a sentence. Can never make it so that there is a kind of tension in this sentence. They can't. They will never be able to do this. And I'll tell you what, Anna, it will even get worse, because the heyday of Google Translate is also past. And why is it past? Because Google Translate now feeds not on input of real translators, human translators, but feeds on itself now.
Exactly.
Yeah. And with Chat GPT, the same thing will happen.
So this is something interesting that I wanted to ask you about creativity, precisely with this example that you gave us from Ulysses. What is creativity for you, and what makes a translation outstanding?
Well, this creativity is not choosing the easiest solution, I think. But first, you have to see that there are more solutions to something. You have to delve into the meaning of the text and the feel of the text and the sound of the text, and then to see that there are more solutions. That it's not a question of you translate A and you get an A in the other language. There's much more to it. So it's not choosing the easiest solution, I think. Yeah.
And what do you think then, if, like you say, with these tools, that there is a simplification of the language, a loss in the lexical richness, perhaps? What do you think readers would say about this? Would they notice?
Yeah, what readers will say, I think they will notice. I, for one, if I read a book and I see a word which is seldom used or a word that I don't know, I feel happy. But if I don't know if everybody has this same feeling. There's also people who say, no, you shouldn't use words, especially not for children, that words that they don't know, or no, I just want something simple. No, but of course, there is a loss. I think ChatGPT and Google Translate and DeepL, they offer, when you have an input, they offer different solutions. And this is maybe interesting because the different solutions you can choose, or you can see at least that there are different solutions. And this also revitalizes the human creativity, I think. Could revitalize it.
Could, yeah, with the prompting, different prompting for different scenarios, maybe.
But still, it's a lot of work, and I think it's much more fun to have a thesaurus, a dictionary, and just to look up words or words that sound alike, or a rhyming dictionary, instead of leaving it to the machine. I mean, you don't get any better yourself from it.
Exactly. Yeah, this is something that we also discuss in relation to students, translation students, but also other students. If they write the essays, then you don't learn.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
you can write a good. You can really have him a good. You can have a good essay out of ChatGPT, but you don't learn anything.
Exactly. What for? So you mentioned paper dictionaries, which is funny because our other people have mentioned to me this as well. Improved dictionaries that more than any technology. But is there any technology that you would wish to have when you are translating?
That's the whole point about technology. You don't know what you miss until you use it. And so I wouldn't know. I'm very glad, for instance, that many texts are digitized, and I can look up passages or look up words that I faintly remember having used somewhere else or having read somewhere else. So that's nice. But without digitization, I wouldn't have thought even of this possibility, or that I missed it. But I'm glad that I have had juiste woord and just the old-fashioned dictionaries and the rhyming dictionary of Jaap Bakker, which is more than enough for me. Although
And
I do look up on the internet, of course, a lot. There is Synoniemennet, which I use quite often. But I think that's the only thing that I use quite often.
so just to maybe round up and close our talk, if machine translation, say in a futuristic world, if machine translation were to replace professionals, what would a world without translators look like?
It's a bit more boring. I know, but there's always people who will write and will translate. The problem is not that there won't be people who translate. There's the problem that they will have a hard time finding a publisher for their translations. But still, I'm not even certain that it will be such a problem, because there will always be small, good publishers who also know the difference between a machine translation and a good human translation. So, but the most I'm rather optimistic that it's because I think it will be a boost to creativity for the real translators, not the translators that can be replaced, but the real ones.
Thank you very much, Robbert-Jan, for coming and talk to us.
Not at all. Not at all.
Thank you again to our invited speaker, and to our listeners. Thank you for being there, and feel free to share our podcasts with your family, friends, and colleagues. This is part of a series of podcasts of the EU-funded INCREC project. So follow us for more episodes, and please share your comments on this platform. See you next time.